Ambassador Sarah Chen stared out the viewport of her ship as the massive space station came into view. Concordia Station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space, its 12 arms stretched out like petals, each one representing one of the species in the Galactic Council. Sarah had seen pictures before, but seeing it in person made her feel small. "First time seeing Concordia, Ambassador?" asked Captain Torres from behind her. "Yes," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the station. "It's bigger than I expected." The captain nodded. "Wait until you see the inside. Each section is built for different species. The gravity changes, the air is different, even the lights change color. It's quite something." Sarah touched the communication device on her collar. "This is Ambassador Chen to Earth Command. We have arrived at Concordia Station. Beginning approach procedures now." A voice crackled through the device. "Copy that, Ambassador. Remember, this is a big moment for humanity. The whole galaxy is watching." Sarah knew that was true. It had been only 200 years since humans first made contact with alien life. Now they were being invited to emergency peace talks with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. It should have felt like an honor. Instead, something felt wrong. The trouble had started 6 months ago when the Zephyrian Empire attacked human colonies near the edge of space. The Zephyrians were known bullies who attacked weaker species and took their worlds. But when they hit human settlements, they got a surprise. Human ships fought back hard and fast. The human fleet didn't just defend their colonies. They chased the Zephyrians all the way back to their home systems and destroyed half their war fleet. Other species in the galaxy had been impressed. Some even cheered. The Zephyrians had been causing trouble for decades, and no one had been able to stop them. But the Galactic Council had a different reaction. They called for emergency talks about maintaining galactic peace and stability. Sarah's ship docked with the station, and she felt the artificial gravity shift as the systems connected. She gathered her team, 3 diplomats, 2 military advisors, and a translator. Though most species spoke the common galactic language, the airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Sarah stepped into Concordia Station for the first time. The corridor was huge, with a ceiling that curved high above her head. The walls were made of some kind of smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Other beings walked through the halls, some tall and thin with blue skin, others short and covered in what looked like scales, and some that seemed to be made of crystal and light. A being with 4 arms and purple skin approached them. "Ambassador Chen? I am Protocol Officer Dexara. I will escort you to the council chamber." "Thank you," Sarah said, trying to hide her nervousness. As they walked through the station, Dexara explained how things worked. Each species has their own section of the station. The council chamber is in the center, designed to be comfortable for all species. "The talks will begin in 1 hour. Sarah noticed that other beings in the hallways stared at her group as they passed. Some looked curious, but others seemed angry or disgusted. One group of tall, thin aliens with silver skin actually stepped away from them as they walked by. "Is there a problem?" Sarah asked Dexara quietly. The protocol officer's 4 arms moved in what might have been a shrug. "Many species are concerned about recent human activities. They believe humans are too aggressive, too quick to fight. We were defending our people," Sarah said firmly. "Of course," Dexara replied, but her tone suggested she didn't agree. The council chamber was enormous. 12 platforms arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different species. Sarah and her team were led to a small platform that had been added for humans. It was clearly an afterthought, smaller than the others and positioned lower than the rest. One by one, the representatives of the 12 council species took their places. Sarah recognized some of them from her briefings. Chancellor Vexitar of the Hegemony was a large, imposing figure with gray skin and cold yellow eyes. The ethereal collective was represented by beings that looked like living crystal, their voices sounding like musical chimes. The Aquatic Federation sent creatures that wore water-filled suits and spoke through translators. When everyone was seated, Chancellor Vexitar stood up. His voice boomed across the chamber. "We are here to discuss the recent actions of the human species and their impact on galactic peace," he began. "For thousands of years, the Galactic Council has maintained order in this galaxy. We have prevented wars, protected weaker species, and ensured that conflicts are resolved through diplomacy, not violence." Sarah frowned. That wasn't exactly true. The Council had mostly ignored the Zephyrian raids until humans got involved. Chancellor Vexitar continued. "The humans have upset this balance. Their aggressive response to a minor border dispute has destabilized an entire sector of space. This cannot be allowed to continue. Minor border dispute? Sarah stood up, her voice sharp. The Zephyrians attacked civilian colonies. They killed thousands of innocent people. A representative from the crystal hegemony, a being made of living rock, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. Violence only leads to more violence. The proper response would have been to file a complaint with the council and wait for mediation. We did file complaints, Sarah shot back. For 3 years we filed complaints about Zephyrian raids. The council did nothing. How many more people were supposed to die while we waited for you to act? The chamber erupted in noise as different species spoke at once. Some supported Sarah's words, but most seemed angry. Chancellor Vextar raised his hand for silence. This is exactly the problem, he said coldly. Humans think with their emotions, not their minds. You are a young species barely out of your primitive past. You haven't learned that civilization requires patience and wisdom, not guns and warfare. Sarah felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice controlled. What exactly are you proposing, Chancellor? A new voice spoke from across the chamber. It was the representative of the ethereal collective, speaking in musical tones that the translator turned into words. We have prepared a treaty that will help humanity learn to be a proper member of galactic civilization. A holographic document appeared in front of Sarah. As she read it, her blood turned cold. The treaty would limit humanity to their current 12 star systems. They would have to give up all their heavy warships. Galactic Council advisors would be placed in human government positions to guide their decisions. Human military technology would be shared with the Council to ensure it wasn't used aggressively. This isn't a peace treaty, Sarah said slowly. This is surrender. You want to turn humanity into a puppet state. We prefer to think of it as guidance, Chancellor Vextar said with what might have been a smile. Your species has shown it cannot be trusted with advanced weapons. This treaty will ensure that humanity learns to resolve conflicts peacefully. And if we refuse? Sarah asked. The chamber fell silent. Then Chancellor Vextar activated a holographic display showing star charts. Red dots marked the positions of Council fleets near human space. We hope it won't come to that, he said softly. But the Council has a duty to maintain peace. If humanity continues to threaten galactic stability, we will take whatever steps are necessary to protect innocent species from human aggression. Sarah looked around the chamber at the faces staring down at her. Some looked sympathetic, but most seemed convinced that humanity was a threat that needed to be controlled. She realized that this had never been about peace talks. This was about fear. The Council was afraid that humans were becoming too strong, too independent. They wanted to control humanity before humans became a real threat to their power. Sarah closed the holographic document without reading the rest. I need to discuss this with my government. How long do we have to consider your offer? 24 hours, Chancellor Vextar replied. We believe that is generous. As Sarah and her team left the chamber, she activated her communication device. This is Ambassador Chen to Earth Command. Priority message. We have a problem. Sarah Chen didn't sleep that night. She spent hours in her quarters aboard the human ship, reading every line of the treaty the Council had given her. The more she read, the angrier she became. The treaty wasn't just about limiting human military power. It controlled everything. Humans couldn't explore new star systems without Council permission. Human trade with other species would be monitored and controlled. Even human scientific research would need Council approval. It was like being put in a cage. Her communication device buzzed. Ambassador, this is President Walsh on Earth. I've reviewed the treaty. This is unacceptable. I agree, Mr. President, Sarah replied. But they have fleets positioned near our space. They're not exactly giving us a choice. We always have a choice, Ambassador. The question is whether we're willing to pay the price for it. The next morning, Sarah returned to the Council chamber. The same representatives sat on their platforms looking down at her like judges deciding the fate of a criminal. Chancellor Vextar seemed especially pleased with himself. Have you had time to consider our generous offer? He asked. I have questions, Sarah replied. This treaty mentions Council advisors in human government positions. What exactly does that mean? A representative from the Techno-Union, a cybernetic being with glowing blue eyes, answered in a mechanical voice. Council advisors will be placed in key positions in human government, military, and industry. They will guide human decision-making to ensure compliance with galactic law and peaceful behavior. You mean you want to control our government? Sarah said. We prefer the term guidance, Chancellor Vextar replied smoothly. Young species often make poor decisions without proper supervision. Sarah looked at another section of the treaty. And this part about technology sharing? The ethereal collective representative spoke in their musical voice. All human military technology must be shared with the Council. We need to understand what weapons you possess to ensure they are not used inappropriately. What about our defensive rights? Sarah asked. If we're attacked, can we defend ourselves? Of course, Chancellor Vextar said. But only with Council-approved weapons and tactics. Any significant military action must be approved by the Council first. Sarah stared at him. So if we're under attack, we have to ask permission to fight back? It is a small price to pay for galactic peace, the Chancellor replied. One of Sarah's military advisors, Colonel Martinez, leaned forward. What about the Zephyrian Empire? They're still out there. They still attack civilian targets. Will the Council finally do something about them? The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then a representative from the Maritime Alliance, a blue-skinned aquatic species, spoke through their water-filled helmet. The Zephyrian problem existed for decades without human interference. It can be managed through proper diplomatic channels. Managed? Colonel Martinez stood up, his voice rising. They've killed millions of innocent people across dozens of species. How is that being managed? Violence is not the answer, the crystal being from the crystal hegemony said in their grinding voice. The Zephyrians can be reasoned with given time and patience. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're not going to do anything about them, are you? You're going to let them keep raiding and killing while you have diplomatic talks that go nowhere? Chancellor Vextar's yellow eyes grew cold. The Council's methods may seem slow to a young species like humanity, but they work. We have maintained peace for thousands of years. Peace for who? Sarah shot back. Not for the species the Zephyrians have been attacking. Not for the colonies they've destroyed. You call it peace because it doesn't affect your core worlds. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives from different species shouted at each other in various languages. Chancellor Vextar slammed his hand on his platform. Silence, he roared. This is exactly why humanity needs guidance. You think only of violence and revenge. You don't understand the bigger picture. Sarah felt something snap inside her. The bigger picture? Let me tell you what I see. I see a council that has grown fat and lazy. You've been in power so long that you think you own the galaxy. When a real threat appears, you do nothing because fighting would be inconvenient. When someone else solves the problem, you get angry because it makes you look weak. Chancellor Vextar's face darkened. You forget yourself, human. You are here because we allow it. Your species exists at our pleasure. Is that a threat? Sarah asked quietly. The Chancellor smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. He activated another holographic display. This one showed detailed scans of Council fleets positioned just outside human space. Sarah counted at least 50 heavy warships from different species. Not a threat, Chancellor Vextar said softly. A fact. We tried to be diplomatic, but your species seems to only understand force. These fleets are there to ensure that humanity makes the right choice. A new voice spoke from across the chamber. It was a representative from the Hive Collective, an insect-like being with multiple eyes. The human military is impressive for such a young species, but you cannot fight the combined fleets of 12 advanced civilizations. Sarah looked around the chamber one more time. She saw fear in some faces, anger in others, but no sympathy. These beings had made up their minds before the talks even started. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. She thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had worked so hard to build something amazing among the stars. She thought about the colonies that had been attacked by the Zephyrians and how her people had fought to protect the innocent. She thought about all the times humans had helped other species, expecting nothing in return but friendship. You know what? Sarah said, her voice calm now. I think I understand the problem. You're not afraid of human aggression, you're afraid of human independence. You're afraid that other species will look at us and realize they don't need the council either. Chancellor Vextar leaned forward. Sign the treaty, human, you have no choice. Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It was a communicator connected directly to Earth Command. She held it up so everyone could see. Actually, we do have a choice, she said. She pressed a button on the device. This is Ambassador Chen to all human vessels and installations. Execute Protocol Exodus immediately. All human personnel are to return to Earth space within 72 hours. All trade agreements are terminated. All diplomatic missions are recalled. All research partnerships are ended. She paused and looked directly at Chancellor Vexitar. The negotiations are over. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some demanded that Sarah reconsider. Others called for her arrest. The ethereal collective's musical voice rose above the noise like a siren. But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. She turned to her team. We're leaving. Now. As they walked toward the exit, Chancellor Vexitar's voice boomed behind them. You cannot just walk away, the council demands. Sarah stopped and turned around one last time. The council can demand whatever it wants, but humanity doesn't take orders from bullies. We never have, and we never will. She looked up at the Yao platforms where the 12 species sat in their positions of power. You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy? Consider the lesson learned. Our place is wherever we choose to stand. With that, she led her team out of the chamber, leaving behind the shocked representatives of the Galactic Council. Behind. Them. Angry voices echoed through the hall, but Sarah didn't look back. As their ship disconnected from Concordia Station, Colonel Martinez joined Sarah on the bridge. Ma'am, do you think we just started a war? Sarah watched the station grow smaller in the viewport. No, Colonel. I think we just refused to surrender before one even started. 3 days after Ambassador Chen walked out of the peace talks, the galaxy began to notice something strange. Human ships were disappearing, not being destroyed or captured, simply vanishing. Trade vessels that had been carrying goods between council worlds suddenly changed course and headed for human space. Research stations staffed by human scientists went dark. Diplomatic missions packed up and left without explanation. Even human citizens living on alien worlds began booking passage home. Chancellor Vextar sat in his private office aboard his flagship, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. His communications officer, a nervous young hegemony officer with pale blue skin, handed him another datapad. Sir, the humans have recalled their entire deep space exploration fleet. 73 ships just jumped to hyperspace heading for Earth space. The Chancellor threw the datapad onto his desk. Let them run home like frightened children. They'll be back within a week, begging us to accept their surrender. But his security advisor, an older female with scars across her gray skin, looked worried. Chancellor, maybe we should reconsider. The humans were providing a lot of services that we took for granted. Such as? Vexter snapped. The advisor activated a holographic display showing trade routes across the galaxy. Red lines marked human shipping lanes that were now empty. Human cargo ships carried 30% of all intersystem trade. Their vessels were faster and more efficient than most council ships. Their withdrawal is already causing supply shortages on 17 worlds. Vextar waved his hand dismissively. Temporary problems. Other species can pick up the slack. The advisor switched the display to show different data. There's more, sir. Human research teams were involved in 42 major scientific projects across council space. Medical research, new technology development, terraforming projects. All of it stopped when they left. We survived for thousands of years before humans appeared, the Chancellor said. We'll survive without them. But even as he spoke, Vextar felt a nagging doubt. The humans had integrated themselves into galactic society much faster than any previous species. In just 200 years, they had become involved in almost every aspect of council civilization. A new message arrived from the Zephyrian Empire. Vextar opened it and read the demand for tribute from 3 more council worlds. His jaw tightened. The Zephyrians were becoming bolder, making demands they never would have made when humans were patrolling the border regions. Sir, his communications officer said hesitantly, We're getting reports that the Zephyrians are massing fleets near the outer rim. Intelligence suggests they're planning something big. Vextar stood up and walked to the viewport of his ship. In the distance, he could see other council vessels patrolling the space around their core worlds. But those patrols felt thin now, stretched to cover areas that human ships used to watch. "Double our patrols in the outer rim sectors," he ordered. "If the Zephyrians want to test us, they'll find we're ready." But privately, he wondered if that was true. The Council's military had been designed for peacekeeping, not total war. For decades, they had relied on diplomacy and economic pressure to solve problems. When force was needed, human fleets had usually been available to help. 2 weeks later, the Zephyrians struck. It wasn't a raid this time. It was a full invasion. 50 Zephyrian warships jumped into the Altair system and attacked 3 Council worlds simultaneously. The local defense fleets were overwhelmed within hours. Vextar rushed to the emergency council meeting on Concordia Station. The chamber that had seemed so impressive during the human negotiations now felt cold and empty. Several representatives looked panicked. "This is a disaster," the Maritime Alliance representative said through their water-filled helmet. "The Altair system produced 20% of our food supplies. Without it, we'll have shortages across 12 worlds." The Crystal Hegemony representative made of living rock spoke in their grinding voice. "Our fleets are moving to retake the system, but it will take time. The Zephyrians have heavily fortified the captured worlds." "How did this happen?" demanded the ethereal collective representative, their musical voice sharp with anger. "Our intelligence said the Zephyrians weren't capable of mounting such a large operation." Admiral Rexton of the Hegemony Navy stood at the center of the chamber, his blue uniform wrinkled from lack of sleep. "The Zephyrians have been building up their forces for months. Our intelligence missed it because we were relying on human reconnaissance data. When they withdrew, we lost our best source of information about Zephyrian activities." An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Finally, the representative from the Techno-Union spoke in their mechanical voice. "Perhaps we should contact the humans. Ask for assistance in dealing with this crisis." "Absolutely not." Vextar slammed his fist on his platform. "We will not go crawling back to those primitive warmongers. The Council has handled threats before without human help." But even as he spoke, more bad news arrived. The Zephyrians had captured 2 more systems, and other aggressive species were beginning to make moves of their own. The Savage Clans, a group of nomadic raiders, had attacked a mining guild convoy. The Shadow Syndicate was demanding tribute from shipping companies traveling through their territory. It was as if every predator in the galaxy had suddenly realized that the guards were 3 months after the humans left. Chancellor Vextar stood in his office looking at a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under Zephyrian control or threat. Yellow zones showed regions where other hostile species were becoming active. The blue zones representing secure council space seemed to shrink every day. His security advisor entered with another report. "Sir, we've lost contact with the research station in the Vega system. Long-range scans show Zephyrian ships in the area." Vextar nodded grimly. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel from the border systems. Focus our defenses on the core worlds." "Sir," the advisor said carefully, "maybe it's time to reconsider contacting Earth. The humans have experience fighting the Zephyrians. They know their tactics." The Chancellor turned away from the map. "No, we will handle this ourselves. The Council has protected this galaxy for millennia. We don't need help from a species that barely knows how to make fire." But in his private moments, Vextar found himself wondering about the 12 human star systems. Long-range scans showed massive industrial activity there, energy signatures unlike anything they had seen before. Whatever the humans were doing, they were working around the clock. Meanwhile, attempts to communicate with Earth had failed completely. Every message sent to human space was ignored. It was as if humanity had decided the rest of the galaxy simply didn't exist. Late at night, when he thought no one was watching, Vextar would pull up old files from the Human Military Liaison Office. Records of battles where human ships had fought alongside Council forces. Reports of human rescue operations saving Council citizens. Intelligence data that human reconnaissance ships had gathered about threats in deep space. For 200 years, the humans had been quietly doing jobs that no one else wanted to do. They had fought the battles that were too dangerous for Council forces. They had explored the regions that were too risky for Council science ships. They had maintained trade routes through areas too hostile for other species, and the Council had taken it all for granted. Now, with human ships gone, the galaxy was revealing its true nature. Without the humans serving as an immune system, every infection and disease was spreading unchecked. The careful balance that had kept civilization stable was falling apart. 6 months after the peace talks, as Zephyrian fleets approached the outer edge of Council core space, Chancellor Vexistar finally admitted the truth to himself. The Council hadn't been protecting the galaxy for thousands of years. The humans had been protecting the Council, and now they were gone. 1 year after the humans walked away from the peace talks, the galaxy was burning. Admiral Rexton stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing horror. Red symbols marked Zephyrian forces advancing on 3 fronts. The proud Council Navy, which had seemed so powerful during the negotiations with humanity, was falling apart. "Admiral, the Third Fleet is requesting immediate reinforcements," his communications officer reported. "They're outnumbered 4-1. Rexton looked at his remaining forces on the display. He had ships, but they were scattered across dozens of systems, trying to defend everything and succeeding at defending nothing. "Tell Admiral Kexran that reinforcements are not available. He needs to conduct a fighting withdrawal to the Deneb system." It was another defeat in a long line of defeats. The Council had lost 37 star systems to the Zephyrians, and the enemy showed no signs of slowing down. Worse, 3 other aggressive species had seen the Council's weakness and started their own expansion campaigns. The bridge door opened, and Chancellor Vextar walked in. The once proud leader looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. His gray skin was pale and his yellow eyes had lost their arrogant gleam. "Admiral, I need to know our real situation," Vextar said quietly. "No political answers. No false hope. Just the truth." Rexton gestured to the tactical display. "The truth? We're losing. The Zephyrians have captured or destroyed 40% of our fleet. The Savage clans control most of the trade routes in the outer sectors. The Shadow Syndicate is demanding tribute from our merchant ships, and we don't have the forces to stop them. What about our allies? The independent species that used to support us?" The Admiral's expression grew darker. "Many of them have switched sides. The Orion Republic signed a non-aggression pact with the Zephyrians last week. The Free Traders Union is now paying tribute to the Shadow Syndicate rather than asking us for protection." Vextar walked to the viewport and stared out at space. In the distance, refugee ships from the latest Zephyrian conquest were limping toward Council space, packed with civilians who had lost everything. "How did we get here?" the Chancellor asked. "We were the most powerful alliance in the galaxy." Rexton joined him at the viewport. "We were powerful because we had the humans doing our dirty work. They fought the battles we didn't want to fight. They protected the trade routes we couldn't afford to patrol. They dealt with threats we preferred to ignore. But they were just one species," Vextar protested. "One young primitive species." "One species with 300 warships," Rexton replied. "One species that produced more industrial output than any 3 Council worlds combined. One species that never backed down from a fight, no matter how dangerous." On the display, another red symbol appeared as the Zephyrians captured yet another system. Rexton watched it happen with a feeling of helplessness he had never experienced before. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "Priority message from the Hive Collective. They're requesting emergency assistance. The Savage clans have broken through their defensive line." Rexton looked at his remaining reserves. He had 12 ships he could spare, maybe 15 if he stripped defenses from the core worlds. "It wouldn't be enough. Tell them we'll send what we can," he said finally. But Vextar was no longer listening. He was thinking about a conversation he'd had the day before with his intelligence chief. Secret communications had been intercepted between various enemy groups. They were coordinating their attacks, sharing information, planning joint operations. The galaxy's predators had learned to work together. They had seen the Council's weakness and decided to divide up Council space among themselves. Humanity's departure hadn't just removed the Council's military edge. It had sent a signal to every aggressive species in the galaxy that the Council could be beaten. "There is one option," Rexton said quietly. Vextar turned to look at him. "What? We could try to contact the humans. Ask for help." The Chancellor's yellow eyes flashed with anger. "Never. I will not grovel before those primitives. Chancellor, with respect, this isn't about pride anymore. This is about survival." But Vextar had already turned away. The idea of admitting that the Council needed help from the species they had tried to control was unbearable. Better to fight and lose than to surrender their dignity. 2 weeks later, desperate and out of options, Admiral Rexton made a decision that would cost him his career but might save his people. He opened a secure communication channel and sent a message to the edge of human space. The message was simple. This is Admiral Rexton of the Council Navy to any human vessels. The galaxy is under attack by hostile forces. Council space is in danger of complete collapse. We need help. He sent the message every day for a week. No response came back. Finally, on the 8th day, his communications officer looked up in surprise. Admiral, we're receiving a response from the human border. Rexton felt a surge of hope. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional. It belonged to Admiral Sarah Reeves, the former human military liaison to the Council. Admiral Rexton, this is Admiral Reeves. Your message has been received and forwarded to Earth Command. Admiral Reeves, thank the stars, Rexton said. The situation here is desperate. The Zephyrians have taken almost half of Council space, and other hostile species are moving against us. We need human assistance immediately. There was a long pause before Admiral Reeves responded. Her voice was polite but cold. Admiral, I've been authorized to give you the official Earth response to your request for assistance. Rexton leaned forward eagerly. Earth wishes the Galactic Council well in resolving their current difficulties. However, humanity is no longer involved in Council affairs. As Chancellor Vextar made clear during the peace negotiations, the Council believes humanity to be too primitive and aggressive to participate in galactic civilization. We have accepted this judgment and withdrawn accordingly. Rexton felt his heart sink. Admiral, surely you can't mean to abandon the galaxy to these barbarians. Millions of innocent people are dying. The galaxy is not our responsibility, Admiral. The Council made that very clear. You wanted us gone, and now we're gone. What happens next is not our concern. But the Zephyrians will destroy everything. All the progress, all the civilization we've built together. Admiral Reeves's voice remained emotionless. That is unfortunate. But as the Council explained to us, young species like humanity don't understand the complex requirements of galactic civilization. We're sure the Council's wisdom and experience will find a solution. The transmission ended, leaving Rexton staring at a silent communication panel. 3 days later, Chancellor Vextar received reports that the Zephyrians had broken through the last major defensive line protecting the Council core worlds. Enemy fleets were now only 2 jumps away from Concordia Station itself. That night, alone in his quarters, Vextar finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. The humans hadn't been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been its guardians, and in his arrogance he had driven them away. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had ruled through fear and politics, not strength. When real predators appeared, they had always relied on others to fight their battles. First it had been the militant species they had conquered and absorbed. Then it had been mercenary groups they hired and discarded. For the past 200 years it had been humanity, young, aggressive, idealistic humanity that had believed the Council's propaganda about peace and cooperation. Humans who had fought and died protecting Council worlds while the Council took credit for maintaining order. Now those protectors were gone, and the galaxy was revealing its true nature. Without humanity's ships patrolling the void, without human industrial power supporting the economy, without human courage standing between civilization and chaos, the Council was just another weak alliance waiting to be conquered. As Vextar prepared for sleep, knowing it might be his last peaceful night before the Zephyrians arrived, he wondered what the humans were doing in their 12 systems. Long-range sensors showed incredible activity there. Massive construction projects, energy signatures that defied analysis, fleets of ships unlike anything in Council databases. Whatever they were building, it was clear that humanity had not been idle during their year of isolation. They had been preparing for something. Vextar closed his eyes and tried not to think about what that something might be. 18 months after Ambassador Chen walked out of the peace talks, a massive fleet appeared at the edge of Council space. It wasn't Zephyrian. It wasn't any of the hostile species that had been carving up the galaxy. The ships were sleek and advanced, displaying technology that made Council vessels look primitive. They broadcast a simple message in the common galactic language. This is the delegation of the Galactic Council, requesting permission to enter Terran Federation space for diplomatic talks. Admiral Rexton stood on the bridge of the Council flagship, one of only 12 major warships left in the entire Council fleet. Behind him, the remnants of galactic civilization waited nervously for a response from humanity. The past 6 months had been a nightmare. The Zephyrians controlled half the galaxy now. The savage clans had claimed most of the outer rim. The Shadow Syndicate ruled the major trade routes. 3 other aggressive species had carved out their own territories from former Council worlds. What remained of the Council controlled just their original core systems, and even those were under constant attack. Billions of refugees crowded onto overcrowded worlds. The economy had collapsed. Starvation was spreading. It was only a matter of time before the remaining Council worlds fell. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a response from the humans. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers belonged to Admiral Sarah Reeves, but she sounded different now. More confident, more powerful. "Council delegation, you are cleared to approach the border station at these coordinates. A single vessel will be permitted to dock. All weapons must be powered down during approach." Rexton looked at the coordinates and felt his breath catch. The border station was enormous, larger than Concordia Station had been before the Zephyrians destroyed it. More concerning were the defensive platforms surrounding it, hundreds of them bristling with weapons that his sensors couldn't identify. "Admiral," his science officer said nervously, "I'm reading energy signatures from those platforms that are off the scale. Whatever weapons they're carrying, they're unlike anything in our databases." Rexton nodded grimly. The humans had clearly been busy during their 18 months of isolation. He gave the order to power down all weapons and approach the station. As their ship drew closer, Rexton could see human vessels patrolling the border. But these weren't the ships he remembered from before the peace talks. These were larger, more advanced, with hulls that seemed to absorb sensor scans. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his tactical officer. The officer studied his screens for several minutes. "I can't get accurate readings, sir. There are at least 300 vessels in our immediate sensor range, but there could be many more. Their stealth technology has improved dramatically." The Council ship docked with the human station, and Rexton found himself in an airlock facing human security officers wearing advanced armor he had never seen before. They were polite but firm as they escorted him through corridors filled with technology that made him feel like a primitive. The meeting room was simple but impressive. At the center sat a woman Rexton didn't recognize, middle-aged with sharp eyes and an air of absolute authority. She wore a uniform with insignia he had never seen. "Admiral Rexton," she said as he entered. "I'm President Martinez of the Terran Federation. Please sit." Rexton sat down carefully. "President? What happened to President Walsh?" President Walsh decided not to run for re-election. The people chose new leadership for a new era. Martinez folded her hands on the table. "I understand you wish to discuss the current galactic situation." "President Martinez, the galaxy is dying," Rexton said desperately. "The Zephyrians have conquered 47 systems. The savage clans control most of the trade routes. 3 other hostile species have claimed former Council territory. Billions of people are dead or homeless." Martinez nodded calmly. "Yes, we're aware of the situation. Our long-range reconnaissance has been monitoring developments across the galaxy. Then you know we need help. The Council formally requests Terran assistance in dealing with these threats." President Martinez leaned back in her chair. "That's interesting. During our last diplomatic contact, Chancellor Vextar made it very clear that humanity was too primitive and aggressive to participate in galactic civilization. He said we needed to be controlled and supervised by our betters in the Council." Rexton winced. "President Martinez, those were different times. The Chancellor may have been overly cautious about human capabilities." "Overly cautious?" Martinez's voice hardened. "Your Chancellor threatened to attack human space if we didn't surrender our sovereignty. He called us barely evolved primates. He tried to turn humanity into a puppet state." "The Chancellor made mistakes," Rexton admitted. "But surely you can't abandon the entire galaxy because of one man's poor judgment." Martinez stood up and walked to a viewport showing the space outside. Human ships moved in perfect formation, their advanced hulls gleaming in the starlight. "Admiral, let me explain something to you. When your Council rejected humanity, you taught us an important lesson. You showed us that the galaxy is not a community of equals working together for the common good. It's a collection of predators and prey with the strong ruling the weak." She turned back to face him. The council ruled for thousands of years not because you were wise or peaceful, but because you were the strongest predators. When humanity became strong enough to challenge that, you tried to put us back in our place. Rexton felt a growing sense of dread. What are you saying? I'm saying that humanity learned the lesson you tried to teach us. We learned that in this galaxy there is no room for weakness, no room for species that can't protect themselves. Martinez returned to her seat. The Terran Federation is willing to help restore order to the galaxy, but not as junior partners in a council alliance, not as hired muscle for species who think they're better than us. What do you want? Rexton asked quietly. Complete sovereignty for humanity over our chosen sphere of influence. All former council worlds that request Terran protection will be granted it, and they will be removed from council authority. The Terran Federation will be recognized as an equal power to any galactic alliance. Rexton stared at her. You want to break up the council? The council broke itself when it chose pride over wisdom, Martinez replied. We're simply offering an alternative to chaos. And if we refuse? Martinez shrugged. Then you refuse. The Terran Federation has no interest in conquering unwilling subjects, but we also have no obligation to save species that would rather maintain their prejudices than accept reality. Rexton thought about the refugee ships crowded around the remaining council worlds. He thought about the Zephyrian fleets moving closer to the core systems every day. He thought about the billions of people who would die if the council fell completely. I don't have the authority to make this decision, he said finally. Of course not. But you can carry the message back to whoever does have that authority. Martinez stood up. The Terran Federation will give the Council 72 hours to decide. After that, we begin our own operations to restore galactic order. As Rexton was escorted back to his ship, he caught glimpses of the human station's true scale. Massive construction bays filled with warships, factories producing advanced technology, training facilities where human soldiers practiced with weapons he couldn't begin to understand. When his ship undocked and began the journey back to Council space, Rexton found himself looking back at the human border defenses. What he had first taken for a few hundred ships was actually thousands, entire fleets hidden by advanced stealth technology, all bearing the flag of the Terran Federation. The humans had spent 18 months building an empire, not the chaotic expansion of the Zephyrians or the brutal raids of the savage clans, but a carefully planned, technologically advanced civilization that could challenge any power in the galaxy. 3 days later, Chancellor Vextar sat in the emergency session of what remained of the Galactic Council. Only 6 species were represented now. The others had either been conquered or had fled to neutral space. They want us to surrender half the galaxy, Vextar said bitterly after Rexton finished his report. Half the galaxy we've already lost, the Maritime Alliance representative pointed out. At least this way some of our worlds might survive. Survive under human rule, Vextar spat. The Crystal Hegemony representative spoke in their grinding voice. The alternative is extinction, Chancellor. The Zephyrians will be here within the month. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The surviving council species agreed to the human terms, though Vextar abstained rather than formally surrender. Within days, Terran fleets appeared throughout the galaxy. They moved with precision and overwhelming force, crushing Zephyrian resistance in system after system. The advanced human warships proved devastating in combat, using weapons and tactics the enemy couldn't counter. The savage clans surrendered after losing their entire fleet in a single engagement. The Shadow Syndicate's leadership was captured in a raid so fast and precise that most of their organization never knew it had happened. Within 6 months, the galaxy was at peace again. But it was a different kind of peace than before.